All right. Welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to speak to you today. Hope you'll join me at some point. And I have seen our subscription numbers go up a little bit, had a little nice bump yesterday. I think that was kind of a good title for the program where we talked about. And now, what the hell did we talk? I can't even remember. Well, it was about the Young Turks, Cenk, and Brianna going at it, and that was pretty interesting stuff. So we'll stay in the left wing live streamosphere, podcast sphere, whatever you want to call about, and also talk obviously about West. This story came out 9 days ago in Newsweek. I guess they're the Daily Beast as well, same organization. So it's an odd title, right? It's an odd caption. Democrat who left party over ignored groping claims backs Cornel West. There's a lot weird about that headline. First of all, the ignored groping claims, I read that was Peter Daou, because this refers to Peter Daou, who was a high-profile attack dog. I call him one of Hillary's henchmen in 2016 because of his unfair attacks, his kneecapping Bernie Sanders. So I frankly hated Peter Daou in 2016, and that contempt that really carried over and was exacerbated in 2018 when he founded this very inaptly named Verit, which is like the Roman or Latin term for truth, Verit, where it was basically just a propaganda network on Twitter for the Clintons and specifically Hillary. It died a painful death. You can't even, there's not even any links. Like I was on Dow's Twitter page today and he had some links to some Verit stuff he had posted because I was trying to find the ugliest things he had written way back when, in the day. And I couldn't even get to it because the Verit site is down. I guess they just didn't want to pay for the maintenance, which is probably quite significant because it's a big site. All right, 240-363-7190 if you want to join me today on Halitics. No guests, just us. And again, with respect to this headline, so I read that groping claims is weird. Like I was thinking, did Daou grope somebody? Because I didn't remember that. And it's kind of very, I think, at best, misleading. What happened, apparently, Daou was not accused. As far as I could tell, there was no allegations or accusations that he had groped anyone or sexually harassed anyone in the Democratic Party. But when he did become active in 2020, he switched sides and he went over and became a Bernie backer. And he said one of the reasons for that was he felt that the Democratic Party was protecting sexual harassers and would not, and I think one of those was Trump. He said, hey, they really didn't go after Trump aggressively enough, hard enough on the way he mistreated women. So be that as it may, the headline really, to my way of thinking, makes it look like Dow's the groper, which isn't true. Also, he didn't really, I guess he said he was no longer a Democrat, but up until sometime this summer, he was working for Marianne Williamson's campaign. And she is, in fact, a Democrat. So he kind of left the Democrats, but he kind of kept one foot in the party as well. Now he is Cornel West's campaign manager. And I was a little bit surprised, but honestly, despite the caption or the meme I put up there, the whatever you want to call it, the promotional slide where I wrote WTF, I have no problem with this. I have no problem whatsoever. I don't think that Daou is a Trojan horse. I don't think that somehow he's getting money under the table from Democratic establishment types to undermine Dr. West. I think he's doing what he thinks is right, and I don't see why there's an uproar. Look, I want a guy who's going to fight dirty on my side. Politics is, Ed Schultz said, I'm just putting everything on the table right now. I remember Ed Schultz saying, I think it was, 2016 maybe. He's not about moral victories in politics. He wants to win. There's no like, oh yeah, well, we fought a really good campaign. Oh, look, Bernie got 44% of the vote and 40% of the electoral college. And he would have won probably if the Democrats hadn't put a fat thumb on the scale, both in 2016 and 2020, which, by the way, I don't really agree with that. I do think the majority of Democratic primary voters in both years wanted someone other than Bernie. And I think that's incredibly unfortunate. Maybe that's not true in 2016. Maybe Bernie in a head-to-head matchup was slightly more popular among Democrats than Hillary. It was true in 2020 that Democrats were looking for someone other than Bernie. And I wish that weren't so. I think the people who voted for Bernie were right. But okay, that's how it is. And, Brianna goes on and on. Brianna J. goes on and on about how all the Democrats dropped out, suspiciously just after South Carolina to consolidate the victory that Biden had gotten, courtesy of Jim Clyburn. I think all that's true. And I think you can make all the cases in the world you want. The bottom line is more primary voters, many more in the end, selected Biden. So I'm not going to say it was all, I think there were, it was definitely stacked against Bernie, but tragically, sadly, Democratic primary voters, if you're watching my program and you're a Democratic primary voter, which I assume is the case, you bucked the preferences of the American people who wanted Bernie to be the president in both years. In my opinion, I think that the polls clearly bear that out. Peter Daou did dirty work for Hillary in 2016, no question about it. And I was looking for some, really ugly stuff that he put out there. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't find as much as I thought I might. Probably some stuff has been taken down. I didn't really, keep track of everything. But I'll just give you a few little, maybe a little bit of a taste of who Peter Daou was. So here he is back in 2018, still on Team Clinton. If you need proof that Bernie Sanders' team did the GOP, so he's saying Bernie's a Republican in disguise. The GOP embraced his attack. Sanders repeatedly eviscerated Clinton on the campaign trail, questioning both her judgment, character, and qualifications. So what Peter Daou is doing there is trying to undermine Bernie from a subsequent run in 2020. It's obviously not going to help Hillary when he puts this out there in 2018. She'd already lost 2 years earlier, so almost 2 years earlier at this point. So it's not helping her in the sense of getting her elected, but he's doing it to burnish her legacy. It's doing it clearly to stay in good with the Clintons, who are, worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He gets a lot out of his relationship with the Clinton family, no question about it. And here he's continuing 2 years after Hillary lost. And you'd think he would have some grace and say, maybe I was wrong. Maybe Hillary wasn't the best choice. But yet he has to persist. It's ugly. It's really bad stuff. And that's exactly who Peter Daou was. And this, I guess, is why there's consternation among some lefties. I don't know if I want to say progressives, among some lefties who don't like the fact that Daou is now on Team West, and in fact is leading Team West. He's managing Team West. I think it's ironic. Here's another tweet, by the way. Many ask whether it's worth debating 2016. I think it's time for the Sanders. No, it's not time for me to let it go. It's not time for Hillary to let it go, who did win with assistance from CNN. If you remember, Donna Brazile gave her questions before debate with, I guess it was on gun control, so she could be, as pointed as possible, hone her attacks on Bernie. The Democratic establishment did everything. CNN constantly putting people like Jim Carville, sleazeball, low rent, scuzzes like him on to attack Bernie. You had the if you're a Bernie bro, you hate women. The only reason any younger women support Bernie is because it's what their boyfriends are telling them to do. As Gloria Steinem said that. Madeleine Albright out there. What was their special place in hell for women who don't support women? So this was the kind of campaigning that we saw in 2016. It was incredibly divisive, pitting important parts of the Democratic coalition against each other, not trying to create a wedge between poor, struggling, working Americans and the wealthy, which is what you'd want, I would assume, if you're fighting a class-based economic justice-centered campaign. Just the opposite. Hillary was pitting whites against blacks, women against men, young women against older women. That was the campaign that they ran. And it was horrible. It was really bad stuff. And in the end, I guess Hillary prevailed. In the primary, she lost the general election. So Daou here doing a little jiu-jitsu, instead of it, the recognition that it's we and the Hillary team who can't let go. It's the Sanders people. They're always on my case. They're always on my ass. Why did you have to go after Bernie? Well, that's just a load of crap. It's pure revisionism. And here he says he continues to undermine Democrats. Again, trying here is Daou to kneecap before it's even started any Sanders 2020 for president run. So Peter Daou, up until around mid-2018, he sucked. I mean, that's just the bottom line. He just was a bad guy, a dishonest guy, a Jim Carville style op. And, totally, I couldn't stand the guy. And part of the reason I couldn't stand him is he was getting a lot of play, a lot of attention. And it appeared to be at least somewhat effective in that I would hear Hillary supporters repeating the same kind of BS argument that Daou presented. And this may be the exact reason that you have so much skepticism. People right now, 5+ years after that ugliness we saw on Twitter, courtesy of Peter Daou, you're seeing leftist podcasters, leftist live stream going after Daou. And I think one thing that I think was we're going to show this guy, Keaton Weiss, who I don't know who the hell he is, but he's on Revolutionary Black Network, which gets a lot of people. So Keaton Weiss is top right as you're looking at my screen. The host of this is CJ. He's the African-American gentleman who is on your screen top left. I don't know who the bottom guy is. He doesn't say anything here, so it doesn't really matter. So we'll hear from Keaton Weiss, who I never heard of before this video either, in just 1 minute. But I think there is this idea, well, this guy, is just beyond the pale. We got to cancel him because he helped Hillary and he went after Bernie. And I'm like, okay, I want to win. If this guy's going to help me win, that's what I care about. So let's go to the video. Here we go. And you see what you think about what Keaton Weiss has to say and whether you agree that, this reflects the choice of Peter Daou, reflects a major error by the West camp, by West, because you can't even say the West campaign, because the West campaign is actually now Peter Daou. I would again note this guy is coming from the Marianne Williamson campaign, and I never heard anyone say boo about him working for her. In fact, Jenks said yesterday, not my favorite by any means, Jenks saying, oh, the best choice by far running is Marianne Williamson in the Democratic primary. He didn't seem to give a rat's fat butt about Peter Daou being part of that campaign at some point. And Jenks was all in for Bernie in 2016 and 2020 and very critical of Clinton and her campaign. All right, here's Here's Revolutionary Black Network.
I interviewed her, several months back now. He asked, look, if the working people of the progressive
He's
movement
talking
burned
about Jill
$100 million
Stein.
on the Bernie Sanders campaign, why should we invest in your campaign? And one of the reasons why I thought that was such a great question is because of the place it was coming from in terms of the perspective of the people who are going to fuel the actual movement, or in this case, the Cornell campaign. And so the same fundamental question applies here. It's not that I don't have respect and admiration for the man himself, but it's a question of, can I direct my audience to invest in the campaign? In order for me to tell people to invest in the campaign, I have to trust that their investment is in good hands with the campaign. And as you guys just watched in that video, to have Cornell seemingly completely checked out of these processes altogether. I mean, by the campaign's own admission, Cornell didn't have anything to do with bringing in Daou.
All right, let me just stop it there for just a sec. So his argument is that I can't call on my viewers of my podcast, my live stream, to support Cornell West if I don't like the way he's running his campaign. And this struck me as an odd statement in a lot of ways. I ask you to support Dr. West because I think he's the best candidate by far. And my request that you support him isn't about giving him money, right? I mean, if you want to give West money, I'm not going to tell you not to. But that's not what it's about. It's about telling everyone you know that this guy's a great candidate. And if you want to get involved, what I would say is help the Green Party get on the ballot in your state. That's what I love about this campaign. It's not just about Cornel West. It's about building an alternative to the duopoly. So I don't understand his point. I get it if you're talking about giving to Bernie, who is running as a Democrat. I get that if you're even going back to 2008 and talking about, hey, if I'm going to ask you to support Barack Obama and send him a check for $100 or whatever, I want to feel like that money is going to be used to good purpose to build a progressive presidency and a progressive movement inside the Democratic Party. A lot of people thought that way, and they were disappointed because Obama shut down Obama for America right after the campaign, and the money, he used it for other Democrats and also just to consolidate his power within the party, not to move the party to the left. So I think that was a huge, certainly was for me, a major disappointment. The point about West is you're not just giving to Dr. West's campaign with somebody you don't trust running it. It's an actual alternative to the duopoly. And that's why if you're going to ask people to contribute to Dr. West, which I don't do, but I do ask you if you want to get involved, to locate your Green Party and ask and work with them to build an alternative, to build a structure, an institution. That was the problem with Bernie. No institution outside the Democratic Party. And yeah, there's DSA and there was Our Revolution, but those have ultimately proven to be kind of controlled opposition. The leftward edge of what's acceptable within the Democratic Party. And you see that leftward edge actually pulled back like the gravitational pull of Jupiter, this massive gassy planet pulling all these moons into its orbit. So the AOCs and the Bernies are ultimately neutered. And that's what, happens if you give to AOC. She's used some of that money to help reelect neocons and neolibs. Now she doesn't do it anymore, allegedly. I don't know. But this is not something to worry about. That will happen with Dr. West. because he's not running as part of the Democratic primary or as a Democrat at all. So I just don't really get this concern. It seems to me it's completely misplaced. But we'll get back to that in a little bit. Let me play a little more from why Keaton Weiss is so upset about the choice of the choice to lead West's campaign, Peter Daou.
He left that to Jill Stein, who then brings in
not?
Peter.
Why shouldn't he? See, he's saying, oh, he left it to Jill. You know, I've heard over and over how great Jill Stein was from people like on RBN. You know, she really had the courage of her convictions. Everyone's telling her not to run, and yet she still runs. She still challenges. She challenged, even with Trump. She's still prepared to take on the Democratic establishment. And this on the far left is considered a great, an example of bravery and of integrity. And I think you run for office because you have a shot. Now there may be some value. You're getting positions out there. You don't like the other choices. And I think it was fair for Jill Stein to run for sure in 2016. I think both choices were so bad. I thought it would have been better if Bernie had run in 2016 as a Green, but okay, he refused to. He bent the knee despite the abuse he suffered, especially at the DNC, the Democratic Convention in 2016, and much of that by at the hand of Peter Daou. So I'm fine, if she wants to run, let her run. But to make her into some sort of a heroine, I don't agree with. But I also don't agree that there's some reason that this experienced Green candidate, Jill Stein, who's run twice now, shouldn't be part of the search committee that tapped Daou. Is ridiculous. Why should she be? Of course he's got a lot of other things he got to worry about. I don't blame him for taking her word on Daou one bit.
Daou, and then says, I wasn't aware of him during the 2016 campaign. I didn't know who he was at the time, which seems like bullshit, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. I think she must have known who he was. But what does that have to do with? It has nothing to do with Cornel West. It has nothing to do with it. Okay, maybe he knew who Daou was. Maybe he didn't. It doesn't really matter.
But at best, I have to ask, well, where the hell were you? Like, where were you? Everybody in this space knew who he was at the time.
Yeah. So, all right. So that's your argument. She didn't know who he was, and she should have known. Yeah. I mean, okay. The question you have to ask, is he going to be a good campaign manager? Is he going to help Cornel West win? And I think that this guy's kind of, scorched earth policy, scorched earth technique, which he learned clearly from people, scuzzballs like David Brock and the aforementioned Carville. That's fine. I want you to be scorched earth. I want you taking on the economy, Cornel West, in the most aggressive way possible. So I don't see an issue here. I don't get it. If you disagree or if you agree, call in 240-363-7190. I want to win. And recognizing, everyone says, oh, he can't win. This is, tilting at windmills and the like. My answer is, okay, winning can mean something. And I always, there's no moral victories. I think with the Green Party candidate, there can be more than a moral victory. You get 5, 8, 10. Now, we've never seen this before. You get a very significant percentage of the vote. You scare the bejeebers out of the Democrat Party. Maybe you legitimately are the reason the Democrats lose, which is what happened in 2000. Certainly not what happened in 2016 or 2020. Not that I really would care. Not that if Jill Stein cost Hillary the election in 2016, and I absolutely don't believe she did. I do believe, by the way, that Ralph Nader gave us George W. Bush, and that was a horrible thing that he did, and he shouldn't have done it. But Al Gore was a pretty damn good candidate. He would have been a good president. Hillary was a bad candidate, and she would have been a bad president. So I can't get upset about Stein and the Greens not, not defeating her, but you want to say they did? Okay, fine. I don't care. They did. If the Green Party in 2024, if somehow you can prove that Dr. West gives the election to Trump over Biden, I'm not going to lose a lot of sleep over that. Biden's not what we need to be president. Biden is hurting our country. Maybe not as badly as Trump will if he wins, but he's hurting our country. And I'm not going to be complicit in electing somebody who's a bad president who's doing harm to our nation. Here's a quote from Peter Daou that I really actually think very strongly really shows you why I kind of, and not only because before I said, well, I don't have a problem with Daou, I kind of am like Daou at this point, and I'm glad he was the choice. This is a really interesting thing that he says back in 2020. And this is in support. Because remember, he at some point moved over. He left the corporate wing of the party and moved from the Clintons over to Bernie and to a lesser degree Warren. He said, hey, I looked at Warren too, but I think I like Bernie better. Now, I want to say this. That was I don't know how in Peter Daou was with the Clintons at that point. But you're taking them on. I mean, these are the big kahunas, right, of the Democratic Party. This is the dynasty, and these are, vicious people. These are dirty fighters. These are, mean people. You don't want to get in bad with them. And he's willing to do it. He says, okay, I'm turning my back. And right here, pandering to the mythical mushy middle is a losing strategy because people see you have no core convictions. Who's he talking about? He's talking about Hillary Clinton right there. He's talking about Joe Biden. Bernie and not me, us, which is also Bernie, are about unapologetic progressivism. And then he adds, Bernie outranks other Dems and Trump on values, empathy, USA Today. That's a pretty bold quote to put out there, a pretty damn bold tweet to put out there just before, I believe that was just before South Carolina. So that's awesome. That's rocking stuff, man, from Peter Daou. And I, again, give him a lot of credit for being willing to do that and to take on, again, the Clinton machine. That's exactly what he did there. He gets a boatload of credit, in my view, for doing that. He has a second very good, I believe, very important, very nice tweet. Let's get to this one. Many ask whether it's worth. Remember when we went back? Okay, this is the one I didn't like. He's blaming the Democrats. I'm sorry. So excuse me for that. Let's get this here. And that's the pandering to the mushy middle. Let's see. Here's the one I wanted to show you. So after Bernie, went down to defeat on Super Tuesday, couldn't get the votes he needed. Thank you, Jim Clyburn. Thank you, establishment Dems. Thank you, Elizabeth Warren, for staying in. And also, thank you, Democratic primary voters, for making the wrong choice, the clearly wrong choice in 2020. Peter Daou has a very gracious tweet here. I fought you hard in 2016, and it's an honor to stand with you, with not me, us. You've left an indelible mark and changed America for the better. So, I don't know how you look at this stuff that, clearly demonstrates that Daou, saw the error of his ways, took responsibility, doesn't deny it, doesn't pretend he was on, not that he could have done. But, he says, hey, I screwed up. I supported Hillary. I was wrong. Now I'm on the right side, the Team Bernie side. Where is this a problem? In what universe should we not be embracing him as a choice or accepting? If not embracing, maybe he's not the best choice. Okay, there might be better people to do the job of Cornel West campaign manager. But Jill Stein doesn't seem to think so, and I respect her opinion. Hillary Clinton, when it came to trying to win in 2016, which she lost, I think you could look at his work for Clinton as a double-edged sword. If I look at what he did, I think it was useful in terms of destroying Bernie, which is what they wanted. So I guess he kind of gets credit for that. If you're looking for an effective campaign manager, I don't see that he's the wrong choice. And what else are you looking for? Don't you want to win this thing or get as many votes as you can? Don't you want to scare the living crap out of the Democrats? Don't you want to force them? Do you know how we ended slavery in this country? There were two pro-slave parties. Well, there were the Whigs, who had kind of a northern anti-slavery wing, which was never dominant, which was never really able to control the party. And there was a southern pro-slavery wing of the Whigs. And there was the pro-slavery Democratic Party. This is up until the 1850s. And because the Whigs simply could not could not choose to be anti-slavery, a truly anti-slavery party broke off from the Whigs. That was a Republican Party. The only way that evil, and it was, I guess we say the evil of slavery was eradicated. Slavery ended as a result of the Civil War, the defeat of the South, and the Emancipation Proclamation. Of course, we still had another evil that arose in its place, Jim Crow laws, after the North got tired of Reconstruction. So, and we're still fighting the legacy of slavery. But the way we eradicated the greatest evil of them all, and arguably worse, the genocide of the Native Americans, of the indigenous peoples, was, I put those, I don't know. I hate to choose, or the Holocaust, which is the worst. I don't know. What about the new Holocaust, where we're destroying our, not just peoples, as we did in as a result of Manifest Destiny, or when the Nazis killed murdered the Jews and the Gypsies and others. Now we're actually destroying the entire planet. We're creating another extinction. So I don't like to say these are all terrible evils. They're all atrocities. They're all awful. Daou did bad things. He's come around. He's acknowledged he was wrong. He didn't kill, as far as I know, anybody. I think you, at this point, say, okay, I'm fine with him. I'm going to keep supporting the West campaign, especially because I'm contributing to a movement. I'm not just contributing to a campaign. We eradicated an evil by ultimately having to destroy the Whig Party. And I think that to eradicate the evils that we're confronting in this society, incredible record levels of inequality, poverty, endless war, the new Holocaust, we are going to need something similar that may end in the destruction of the Democratic Party. So more on, we played the video from the Revolutionary Black Network, which is, by the way, a pretty cool show. I don't like to promote other programs, but I think they do a pretty nice job, I got to be honest. I learn a lot from them, so that's what I really care about, is learning. So it's pretty cool. By the way, you're on Halitics right now. You're not watching anybody else. You're not listening to anybody else. You're watching Halitics. 240-363-7190 if you want to join me. And please click like. And please click subscribe. Bottom right of your screen, the black and white. That's what I want. Honestly, you ask me what I want. That's what I want. Well, I want Dr. West, ex-president. Get a lot of them. So here's what the New York Times has to say. And I thought the New York Times covered this pretty well. So I want to give them a little bit of a platform here. He was a Hillary Clinton cheerleader. Now he calls Democrats a threat. Peter Daou, former Democratic activist, is running West's third party campaign. And he talked to the Times. So this is why, again, that whole concern that Keaton Weiss expressed about asking people to support West. I don't know where the money's going. I don't know what he's doing. He's not even in charge of making the selection for campaign manager. You're not just giving, like when you gave to Bernie in 2020, maybe not, you didn't think so in 2016. I didn't think so in 2016. But by 2020, you had to know you were giving to the Democratic Party. But when you contribute to Cornel West, you're contributing to an attack on the duopoly, trying to move away from the two-party system that we currently don't enjoy. And I can't see hiring Peter Daou in any way as in the least bit undermining that goal, right? The goal to put down like a rabid dog, this horrible two-party system. And let me just play along. I'm going to get Cenk back on from yesterday because he had a quote that I thought was interesting. It kind of makes my point here. But this was really interesting. And again, this is Peter Daou. This is from the New York Times article about Daou. And remember, my point is you support Daou because, you support West, and you don't let Dow's appointment stop you. Because with West, yes, because you like West, you like his, I do. You think he's right. You think his pro-peace, his pro-equality positions are crucial, critical. Just what we need is pro-environment policies. No other candidate combines them. He's taking on the duopoly, which certainly Marianne Williamson isn't. Marianne Williamson is pro-war. West has a much longer, stronger history of true progressivism than, I guess whatever you call it, alternative medicine or self-healing or whatever, self-help. Marianne Williamson, who's kind of a scammer, let's be honest. So clearly West is a better choice. And here is what Peter Daou says, why I'm supporting him. Why I supported Hillary, but now I look back, I was enabling and supporting a system, the two-party system, that is oppressing people. If you're going to get involved in politics now, don't get attached to one politician or one party. Again, the concern, I don't want to give to West. I don't know really where it's going. Here's where it's going. It's going, and I don't ask you to, whatever the hell you want. I mean, what I'm doing is working for the Greens to get him on the ballot here in Maryland. I think that's the way you really help West, and more importantly, even long-term, providing a real legitimate alternative to the two-party system. So as Daou says, it's oppressive. It's clearly, unquestionably, undoubtedly oppressive. So that's why you should support him. I don't really think there's really any question. Just one more quick quote here, then I want to play Cenk. And this, again, I understand the Democratic, strike that. I understand the concern in the progressive punditocracy universe. Look at what a bad guy Peter Daou is, and we can't trust him. And I'll be honest with you, if it was David Brock, the hitman, the guy who went after Anita Hill, then founded Media Matters, yeah, I wouldn't. He's disgusting. I don't see Daou at that level. I just don't. I think Daou has had a real change of heart. He's been consistent since at least before the 2020 primaries. And he was effective. He is effective. And here he says it. What Dr. West is doing is going at the system directly. Spot on. And he says, and I love this is not going to be some sort of process in which, down the line, well, maybe not. Maybe we'll go endorse Biden if the polls show us at 0.5%. And Daou is saying that's not going to happen. So again, there's some real conviction here. All right, what does Junk or Jenk or whatever his name is have to say? No, I know it's Jenk. What does he have to say? And again, I think this really demonstrates the superiority of West. Here we go.
Makes no rational sense to me.
Let me ask you this, Jenk. Why would the Democrats
seem unhinged there? No rational sense. No rational sense. And Brianna is at her best when I believe, when she's dealing with these kind of loudmouth blusterers. Robbie Suave on the right, he's very suave. He never, not a hair out of place. He never he never gets heated. So she's kind of, and he's a libertarian, and they don't agree on a lot of certainly the economic stuff, but they agree on the identity politics stuff. In a way, it's kind of unfortunate because they're both a little bit cooler. Although he, because he's so cool, calm, and collected, she sometimes gets a little more animated, which is cool. I like it. But with Junk, Brianna, again, he gets crazy, he gets loud, he blusters, and she just takes it down a notch and makes him look, by comparison, 10 times worse. So here we go.
Democratic Party ever stop? You don't want to characterize it as rigging. I will. Rigging the primary, disallowing a primary. Why would the media ever stop putting its finger on the scale the way that it does? If voters ultimately validate that behavior by continuing to vote blue no matter who, no matter how bad the Democratic Party gets, and no matter how corrupt the DNC is, when does it stop?
All right, that's a great question. And I want to just, before we hear his answer, she's saying to him, you're saying, because he had already said, Junk had already said, you have to vote blue no matter who in the general election because there's just, and this is the same argument Kulinski and Crystal Ball make. And I don't agree with the factual underpinning, which is whatever you think about Joe Biden, Trump is 10 times worse. Trump is 100 times worse. There's simply so much daylight between Trump and Biden, you can't even consider not voting for Biden in the general election. It's sort of like the Hitler versus Stalin argument, except you'd say, well, Stalin is maybe more Trotsky, right? Or he's not as bad. He's not really, the mass murderer that Stalin is, and Trump is Hitler on steroids. That's kind of the argument. And I reject it because, we're right now living in the new Holocaust, and both Trump and Biden are exacerbating the new Holocaust. And at least when it comes to one of the most important issues of our time, endless war, which has been an issue for humanity. Again, they're both bad. I know Trump put troops in Ukraine, and he did try to stop the flow of, he put materiel in Ukraine. He tried to stop the flow a little bit and got bashed for it, but he wasn't great. He wasn't great at all. He exacerbated the drone war, Obama's drone wars. So they're both really bad. But in the end, at least Trump is saying we need peace in Ukraine, which is better than what Biden is saying. So I'm just simply not going to sit here and say that there's this huge gap between the two candidates because I don't buy it. I don't believe it. I don't accept that. And that's pretty much what Brianna's saying. She's saying, well, if we embrace your argument, which is you have to vote for Joe Biden in the general election, assuming Marianne Williamson doesn't win, then when does it ever stop? The media is always going to do everything it can, and what it can do is enough to defeat any progressive insurgent in the primary, and that will end the progressive insurgency. And then you're going to sit here and say, vote for the neolib, vote for the neocon. So when does that ever end? And here's what he says.
Yeah, it stops when we win the God.
Oh. That's terrible. Look, he says it stops when we win the goddamn primary. I'm sorry about that, folks. I guess I went 1 second too short. I cut it off 1 second too short. It stops, says Jank, when we win the goddamn primary. And of course, Brianna's point is you can't win it. You can't win it as long as that's your attitude. Because there's no consequences to the Democrats for destroying any progressive insurgent. Because of that, you can't win. He says, oh, no, look, Bernie almost won. Bernie almost won. Yeah, there was a confluence of factors that almost led to Bernie's win in 2016. By the way, there's no Bernie on the horizon either. That's another issue. Where's the next Bernie? There's no other Bernie. There's no one in the Democratic Party who's even close to as far to the left as Bernie. And Bernie ain't even that far to the left. So Cenk doesn't have an answer. And that's why what Daou says is is a great rejoinder. Is a great rejoinder to the argument you got to vote for the Democrat. Because that will not change the system. That will not change. We will not change the system if we vote for the Democrat. And that's why he is not running as a Democrat also. Because we found that when people run as Democrats, like Bernie, like AOC, they don't in the end take the system on. And Dr. West is. So, yeah, I mean, you go, Peter Daou, right? I mean, this is not in any way, if anything, I appreciate Peter Daou being picked. Somebody that I all but loathed, I did loathe up until 2019. All right, let's hear Dr. West kind of wrap it all up for us with Crystal. And then you all have a great day. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit of the UAW strike. I was kind of intrigued by some questioning of Mary Barra, the CEO of the biggest of the big three, GM. I thought the CNN interviewer did a pretty good job there. And really making the case, and we'll be talking about this tomorrow, not today. Really, in the end, if you parse the responses by Mary Barra, making an incredibly strong case for that man you see on the screen to your far right, Dr. Cornel West. Here's Dr. West, and then I'm out of here.
I think we've reached such a low point in an idea that either we go for broke and try, in fact, to reshape most of the political system. It'd be nice to have rank priority voting and proportional representation. That would be a positive thing. Democratic Party has no interest in that whatsoever. It's clear that Biden and company have no serious interest in trying to scale back on the militarism abroad. They have no serious interest in trying to really make poor and working people a priority. So that Bernie's argument, and again, I love my brother no matter what, but Bernie's argument is that I don't need.
We are happy to have
Bernie's argument. Bernie's argument, just to clarify what it was, Bernie's argument was you have to vote blue. You have to vote for Biden. You can't vote for Dr. West. And he's saying, well, no, that we're at a point where things are so rough, so bad, so serious in our nation, and the challenges are so tremendous that, I may love Bernie, but we need something stronger. We don't need evolution in the Democratic Party. We do need a revolution. And I think that's beyond peradventure. He's just spot on correct.
And we're going fascist.
Yeah.
We just need to acknowledge that, because we're going to go sooner or later. It's going to go back and forth. So we've got to have some kind of break, or at least raise our voices and tell our precious citizens the truth about our condition. The 63% of our brothers and sisters of all colors who are citizens, who are living paycheck to paycheck as the beginning. Now, Brother Bernie understands that. Don't get me wrong. He's on my side in that sense. But at this particular historical moment, he's on the side of the Democratic establishment.
Yeah, I just don't see any argument against that. Dr. West is the choice, and he will be the choice next year. Support him. Not with your money. I mean, if you've got an endless supply, I guess, go ahead. I'm not saying you shouldn't contribute, but I think the way to support him, the best way, the way that could, not saying it will, of course, but that could lead to transformative change is by building a movement through the Green Party. And by the way, I don't think the Green Party is perfect by any means. There are many concerns, many issues, but I think the corruption isn't there, and the true concern, at least for the American people, working people, poor people, struggling people, the environment, it is there.